With me, I have Reserve Bank Governor Adrian Orr. Adrian, thanks for being here. First of all, how are you and your team bearing up?
We're doing well, thanks. Thanks for asking, and pleased to see you're looking well and healthy. The bank has been running on a skeleton crew actually at our two locations, but fully operational remotely. So we've been very pleased with our ability and in fact our productivity.
Sure. Are you locked down, working from home?
Today I am, but I have been going into work, so I've unfortunately got to sign my own letter to say that I was a critical person. And
money being a very essential service.
Yeah, I tried that with my homework when I was young. It never worked.
This crisis is obviously unprecedented. How do you approach that?
Well, I think the catch cry has been confidence and cash flow. And being at the central bank, we can assist on both fronts, particularly with the cash flow. So we've been on the monetary policy side, took the interest rates to a new record low and said we're going to keep them there for at least 1 year. But we then started quantitative easing. In other words, really climbing into the liquidity provision. The way we're doing that is by buying government bonds off the banks so they can swap their holdings of government bonds for our cash. That keeps the long-term interest rates low and it provides liquidity for the banking sector so they can keep on doing their money and lending. So that's
sure. $30 billion, which is a significant amount, and this is the one that I always get asked, where do we get $30 billion from to do that? And I'm always hesitant to say we create it, but we kind of are drawing down on the collective wealth.
Current and all future collective wealth, so really the government itself, whenever it spends, it has to raise its own money. That's through taxes and or borrowing. Government bonds are a form of an IOU that the government writes. People internationally will want to buy that. It's a very low risk, good yielding investment, government bonds globally. And so we are borrowing that money, but it is borrowing. At some point it has to be paid back. Yeah. And the case, $30 billion is large in a New Zealand dollar term, but it's very small in terms of global financial markets. So, the debt program, and given the great fiscal position the government is in, there's an enormous amount of headroom for borrowing. Yes, it does have to be paid back through time. But we've done that before, and we're starting from very low levels. At the moment, we're heading back to probably more historically average levels of debt as we get through this.
And you'll keep those assets on the book, so there is hope that that the Reserve Bank can unwind those and sell them back into the market one day.
Completely. We're very comfortable with it. It's it's just business as usual for us, to be honest. So both that, we're part of the Crown balance sheet anyway. It just happens to be sitting with us. That's a good place to be because we bank the banks, and so we're able to work closely with the banking sector, making sure that they can use their assets, they can swap their assets, including these government bonds, for our cash. They keep doing their business. The banks are liquid, they're well capitalised, and the cash flow keeps going.
The banks are key, and obviously no secret there was a bit of tension there last year around the capital review, but it seems like you guys are working together very closely. Just today I see there's an agreement around dividends and also a lending facility there.
Yeah. Oh, without doubt. The banks are critical infrastructure. They know their role in society. At the end of the day, they're a business. They want to make a profit. We want them to be profitable. But at the same time, holding capital is for exactly times like this, to be deployed and used. They've got a really tough job. They are going to have to be allocating credit carefully across the economy to businesses that are as uncertain as everyone is, and so they will have to make important judgments. But with the banks, we've negotiated very quickly the mortgage holiday. A rolling loan gathers no loss, so they're able to provide liquidity to households, and likewise the government business finance lending scheme is a great initiative. We've opened up a term lending facility so the banks can borrow money from us in order to go off and do their lending. So yet another form of just working together, making sure that they can do their job. They're in every household, every business in the country. They have the reach, we don't.
So that means they can do some lending that might otherwise have been just too risky for them to take on?
I think they will be very challenged. They're going to have to make calls around at what point is this illiquid versus insolvent. And, across not only just the Reserve Bank, but all the regulators as well, we've been working hard to make it easier for banks to make those calls. So that, the blame storming at the end of all of this doesn't, continue for too long. We know these are unusual times. We're saying cash flow this place as best you can for the time being as the situation evolves. But we don't run a zero failure regime here in New Zealand. Companies, some will go, some will struggle through with good assistance, others will flourish. Likewise, the financial system.
I mean, we're going to see a huge reshaping of the economy. It seems fairly inevitable now, I guess, in the next months and years potentially.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you'll see aggregation in some sectors. You'll see new businesses coming to the fore. You'll see ownership changes happening across businesses. It's going to be a very dynamic period. And I know we all come out, we were very smart people, very innovative going into this. We'll be the same coming out. But keeping that cash flow and that confidence going is a critical role we can play at the Reserve Bank.
Yeah. In terms of retaining that confidence and that optimism, I guess, in very tough times about New Zealand's position in the world, how are you approaching that? Because, it is easy to get overwhelmed by this. A lot of people are.
Yeah, and watch out for each other as well. I mean, without doubt, I myself, you have moments of, oh, really?
Yeah.
But then, keeping yourself busy. I feel very fortunate being able to be fully engaged, doing what we're doing. So motivation is certainly not lacking. But the confidence is strong. People just have to know that they're sitting here with the best banking system in the world, one of the most best capitalised, highly liquid, and you've got a government fiscal position. I've always said we're starting from a great place into a tough situation.
It's very difficult to predict things right now, but what next? I mean, what other tools does the bank have that it can use if required?
Yeah, so on the monetary policy side, we can continue providing stimulus for a long, long time. Interest rates are going to remain low for a long time, and we've got various means. We can increase, if we needed to, the quantitative easing. Likewise, we can use other tools, for example, the interest rate again, and or directly purchasing foreign assets through the exchange rate. Through the financial stability side, there's accelerated work going on with the government around deposit protection. That was being discussed publicly prior to this crisis, and so that work's being accelerated, so giving people some comfort around that. And then ongoing, I suppose, access to liquidity. We can continue to accept riskier assets onto our book to provide that cash to keep the businesses going. The challenge will be really getting out into the households and into the businesses. Some businesses are much easier to access through, being large, having many avenues of raising capital. It's the small businesses, it's the households who, have to have a close relationship with their banks so they can be back on their feet very quickly.
So you'll continue to work with the finance minister and government about making sure these things are lined up to get to the right people, I guess.
That's right. I mean, what's the famous quote? I think we're at the end of the beginning. We're certainly not at the beginning of the end. We're still talking about near-term triage, making sure that the plumbing's working. I know government is already moving in. When I talk about government, the whole bureaucratic situation, moving into how do you dismount from this lockdown? What are the signals? Do you do it town by town, island by island? What level of confidence do you need? What is critical infrastructure that just has to survive and will be financed? So all of that work's going on, as well as much longer term work around how can New Zealand really benefit coming out of this situation in a global position? And being small, being isolated, we stand a great chance of being highly successful.
I guess like a lot of us, a lot of the world, we are, of course, just watching and waiting and hoping that, the lockdown works, get on top of this first wave, because that's the unknowable right now is the disease, the virus itself.
That's exactly it. I mean, the business is never going to feel confident until we have answers to that. There are still more questions than answers around transmission, around whether people do or don't have natural immunity to it, or whether that's just, type 1, type 2 errors. All of these things are being worked on rapidly globally, and I know here there's some significant quantitative work going on. What we can do from our side is at least provide as much certainty, normality as possible through the standard financing banking structure. But it's the health issue that is number one, and I would just not like to be in the position of saying at what point do you start dismounting. It comes down to that simple: what is the cost of a life?